Hello there everybody, this is Alex from Hardcoring Guides, bringing you my run for BioShock Wrench Only Survivor, no Vita-Chambers, difficulty run. I think I said that correct. So yeah, we're playing on Survivor, no Vita-Chambers, and only using the wrench. I will be using plasmids and I will be using tonics. So for those that are curious, that's that. First enemy is going to come up here, and sometimes he tosses the couch left or right, it doesn't really matter, you just go whichever direction. This one is probably going to be one of the more tougher enemies to deal with in this particular part of the game, especially early game stuff. So early game, you know, you're gonna be kind of a little bit weak, but not like incredibly weak. My pro tip for defeating him is just whenever, like after every hit, just back up, let him take a swing and let him miss the swing. So I want to go ahead and say a few things real quick. This is not technically a guide, but if you use it as a guide, that's perfectly fine. I understand. And a few tips for later for those that want, you know, to maybe do it yourself. I recommend if you're gonna take down Big Daddies, I recommend going after you got to Fort Frolic, because you'll have the camera, and also, you know, in Fort Frolic you can eventually get Bloodlust, which heals health and Eve. And don't worry about that crap that people tell you about, like, well, you shouldn't use it because, like, the damage with Wrench Jockey. Shut up, like, it doesn't matter. Equip as much Wrench Jockey as you possibly can, and Sports Boost. At least maybe have like one Sport Boost tonic and at least maybe 2 Wrench Jockeys by the time we get further in. So yeah, don't mess with Big Daddies until later, and I'll show you which Big Daddies I take down in that fight. And the reason why Bloodlust is great is because not only do you heal Eve and health every hit, which does work on Big Daddies too, by the way. It's great because Electro Bolt, and I went through the whole game without upgrading my plasmids too, so there's that. I just didn't really have any real need or want to do it. I didn't even get all the Big Daddies either, so for those that are curious, I didn't 100%. This is not 100% run, this is just a straight up, I'm just going through. My normal BioShock brain does kick in, and I tend to go out of my way to do other things, but for the most part, this is not a 100% run at all, so keep that in mind. Yeah, these first 2 guys, I just, you know, shock them and then just hit them. You have enough Eve and enough, you know, hypos at this point that you can pretty much just get away with the, you know, the 1-2 punch, which is something I kind of end up dropping until I start fighting Big Daddies. And that's where Bloodlust comes into play, because with Bloodlust, you can shock the Big Daddy, especially bouncers. You can shock them if you find yourself a spot where you can, you know, kind of like manipulate them a little bit. You can shock them and then go for a hit and get that little bit of Eve back, so you don't have to, you know, waste the time, you know, with the animation of healing it back. Technically, you could just equip like an Eve Saver tonic on, but I don't recommend that, really. You can do whatever you want, really. I'm just telling you, like, what I did and what I recommend. I don't... Eve Saver is good. It's just that it's not like the end-all, be-all thing, because eventually you're going to run out of Electro, and you're going to run out of Eve, so you can't use them. So why not just have Bloodlust? Don't worry about Booze Hound. Don't worry about any of that stuff. Just, you know, ignore alcohol. And like I said, I'll show you what I do. Medical Expert, yeah, that's another thing I ended up equipping. Try to buy as much combat and physical tonic slots as you can. And I ended up the game with only 4 plasmids. 4 plasmid slots. I ended up with Enrage, and then Incinerate, Electrobolt, and Telekinesis. So that's my group of stuff. Also, this is just more of like a me thing, but I'm going to be cutting out as much fluff as possible. So no cutscenes and probably not that many in-betweens. I will be showing you, like, you know, me going from one place to another if it's not too boring. So, because usually there's like some fights and stuff here, and I will be showing off, you know, using the camera, which I do highly recommend you should be doing. So, the thing is, this game is technically beatable, you know, with a wrench only. Of course, I mean, I did it. But the camera, I don't know if people would qualify that, because, like, I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's really much of a thing to be out of a wrench-only run. If you wanted an absolute 100% wrench-only run, there are those. And I feel like most people will probably just let me get away with, you know, using the wrench only as a weapon, because the camera's not really a weapon. Yeah, it takes up a weapon slot, but I don't know. If you think that I cheated by using the camera, that's fine. I'm sure there's probably a guide or run out there somewhere that's probably done it. For me, I'm just going to use it. It I'm pretty much just trying to show people like that you can go through with a wrench for your main offensive weapon anyway. And the best way of doing that, you know, the camera does help big time, especially the big daddies. Because like if you didn't have that camera on, it would take much longer to take down big daddies, which will then take much longer to get at them, and you know what have you. That little bit of extra damage does tend to help. Even with like wrench jockey, you still don't really do that much damage to big daddies. I mean, hell, even with the, you know, the extra camera damage is still not relatively that much either, especially on Survivor. They're really tanky. The thing that ends up helping you much more in the long run is actually Electro Bolt, of all things, because as you can see, you know, with the quote-unquote 1-2 punch, you do quite a bit of extra damage. And you do a lot more damage, especially against, like, you know, big daddies. It does just a decent chunk of health. And we'll talk about that when we get there. So, yeah, like I said, just ignore the big daddies, at least until Fort Frolic. And then if you want to fight them in Fort Frolic, that's fine. If you want to fight them at any time that you want, that's great too. Another thing is always try to remember, like, where explosives are, because explosives are going to help you. If you find a big daddy, just go grab a bunch of explosives with telekinesis and just, you know, line them down in front of it and just shoot one at them. Also, what I do with lead heads is I tend to, like, circle around them so that way they can't hit me with their gun. I get in close so that way I can kind of, like, trigger them to go into a melee hit, which, you know, a lot of time they do. And for thugs, it's kind of the same concept. You just kind of like get in and get back out. But thugs are usually relatively simplistic enough to where you don't really need to worry about it too much, about taking too much damage. But if you're really worried about them, like circling around them does work. But, you know, that get in, get out tool could also prove worthwhile if you wanted to avoid as much as you could. What's funny is, like, a long time ago, not that long ago, I think it was like earlier this year. Maybe it was like last year. I don't know. Sometime recently, I remember I was trying to do a BioShock wrench-only no-damage run. I think it might have just been no damage in general. And I got past, like, the first enemy and got to, like, the first garden. And I got past him. And after that, I'm like, this might be a little too difficult for me to do. So, I'm sure somebody's probably done a no-damage run before, but I mean, that would be kind of cool to try out. But as it stands right now, I don't think I'm at that skill level yet. I mean, it's possible, but right now, yeah. So, this is pretty much it. Just keep Shock in the water. I know I said it's not really that a guide, but I'll just tell you what I do anyway and pretend like it's a guide. So, just let me live my fantasy, please. You can lure out the other, you know, splicer from the bathroom into the water too. That works. That saves you the trouble. So, yeah. That's it for this one. I hope to see you guys in the next level. So, as always, take care, everybody.